looking at adding integers with different signs. So if you haven't watched the video before this or haven't seen the lesson of adding integers with the same sign, I would encourage you to go do that really quick. All right, so before we start, let's talk about some vocabulary. We're going to be talking about additive inverses. This is two numbers whose sum is 0. And then opposites are two numbers that are the same distance from 0, but are on opposite sides of 0. So opposite numbers are the additive inverse, right? Both have the same distance from 0. So if you were to add them together, they would equal 0. All right. So we have 3 steps to add numbers with different signs, or add integers. To add integers with different signs, we need to find the absolute value of each number. So hopefully you remember this from last lesson. If not, you can go ahead and watch that. This is just the distance from 0, right? Distance is always going to be positive. After we find the absolute values, we then need to subtract the lesser absolute value from the greater. And then lastly, we need to use the sign from the integer with the greater absolute value for the sum. And the sum is just the answer to our addition problem. Right? So for our first example, we are going to find the sum of -10 and 5. So first we need to find the absolute value of each addend. So the absolute value of -10, we need to find out how far is -10 from 0. Well, -10 is 10 units or 10 spaces away from 0. Remember, distance is always going to be positive. So for the absolute value, we're basically just going to make sure whatever number we have is positive. So -10, the positive version of that is 10. So that is our absolute value. For 5, the distance from 0 is 5. It is already positive, so that is our absolute value. Okay, now we need to subtract the lesser absolute value from the greater absolute value. So 5 is the lesser of our absolute values. So we want to do 10 minus 5. And then the last thing we need to do is use the same sign as the addend with the greater absolute value. So if we look at -10 and 5, -10 had the greater absolute value, so we're going to use its sign, which is negative. So our answer is going to be -5. All right, 3 more practice problems. If you think you got it, you can go ahead and pause the video, try them on your own, and then follow along to check your work. Or if you need a little bit extra, you can watch along and do them with us. So first, we need to find the absolute values of each number. So -9 and 13, they both have a absolute value of 13 and 9. This is their distance from 0. Remember, distance is always positive. Now we need to subtract the lesser absolute value from the greater. So 9 is the lesser absolute value, so we're going to do 13 minus 9, which is going to equal 4. Now to get our final answer, we need to look at the greater absolute value and see what the sign of that number is. So our greater absolute value is 13, and it has a positive sign or no negative sign in front of it. So we know that our final answer is going to be positive. So we have a positive 4 as our answer. All right, we're going to do the same process on the next one, 25 plus -8. So our absolute values are 25 and 8. Now we need to subtract the lesser absolute value, which is 8. So we're going to do 25 minus 8, which is going to give us 17. Now to find out the sign of our number, we need to look at the greater absolute value, which is 25. And 25 has a positive sign or just no negative sign in front of it. So we know that 25 is positive and our final answer is going to be positive. So our answer is positive 17. And lastly, we are going to be doing -14 plus 36. Same steps as we've been doing. We need to find the absolute value. So we get 14 and 36. Okay, now that we know our absolute values, we can subtract 14 from 36. So we do 36 minus 14. That's going to give us 22. Now we need to look at our initial numbers, see which one has the greater absolute value. 36 has the greater absolute value, and it is positive. So our final answer is going to be positive. So we get positive 22. All right, that is all. Hopefully this helps. Good luck. See you guys next time.